Hey everybody, David Costello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today's guest is Jason Staats. So Jason is a principal at Brenner LLP, and he's also, quote unquote, building the future of accounting and small business with no code. So if you haven't heard of no code, don't worry, we're going to dig into it. He's also the founder of Launch FA, which for me, I'm a big fan of the newsletter. I try to get my team here at Jetpack on the newsletter. I think it shows the bleeding edge and cutting edge technology that the accounting firm profession can adopt. So Jason has really good pulse, I think, what's coming next and what are some things that could impact your firm. And then he's also a founder of Realize, which is bringing together, I think, tech-focused accounting firm professionals to see how best they could utilize these tools, share best practices, templates, and so much more. But before I continue, I just want to say, Jason, welcome to the show.
You bet. David, good to be here.
Yeah, and so we're going to do this episode a little differently than most episodes. I think our listeners are in for a treat. The way we're going to approach this episode, we call it the 3x3. And so essentially, we're going to talk about 3 tools and 3 trends that you can think about for your firm. And if the Growing Your Firm community loves this type of format and wants to see more of it, drop me a line, David at jetpackworkflow.com, because this is something we're testing out. But having said that, Jason, before we get into the 3x3, just really quick, tell us about what you do at Brenner. What kind of firm is it? How big is it? Just to kind of set the context before we dig into all the fun trends and tools.
Yeah. So Brenner is actually a 75-year-old firm here in Oregon. So I've been around a long time. Historically had just been a tax firm. And then in the last 5 or 6 years ago, I kind of led the charge into more of a CAS focus and more of the kind of outsourced managed accounting model. The world was changing so fast. I felt like, if our firm was going to be up to speed on the tech and the stack and everything you need for a business to be successful right now, we just had to do it ourselves. So we're now pushing into more of the kind of outsourced accounting aspect. But yeah, we got a team of about 30 people in Oregon here and another 5 or 10 across the country.
And if you feel comfortable disclosing, how well is that CAS business doing since the launch of it?
Awesome. I mean, it's grown like crazy, definitely as fast as we would want it to grow. So anytime you grow too fast, your systems and expertise kind of lags behind that. So we're being cautious, but CAS makes up almost a quarter of our business now, and we've been doing it less than 5 years.
Wow, less than 5 years. So for the listeners, you can extract the headcount against the revenue of the firm and apply to a very probably healthy run rate for that service line item. Probably healthy 6 figures, low 7 figures. Contributing to the firm. Yeah.
Yep. And honestly, we've been pretty cautious. We've actually haven't marketed it at all. It's kind of interesting. It's a different approach to CAS. We have around 3,000 clients, 3,000 tax clients. And rather than building a CAS business from scratch, we're able to kind of handpick the clients out of that mix that are a great fit. And so I think it's a little bit of a roundabout approach compared to how most people do it, but it's going well so far.
Yeah, what's interesting, and I promise we'll get to the 3x3. I hyped up 3x3, and we'll get to it, listeners, I promise. But this is very interesting in that if you have it, would it ever be viable to buy a practice that has thousands of tax clients, knowing that you're then going to add this service line item to that mix, right? So you're kind of buying your distribution, but knowing that the growth of the firm is going to be from this new service line item that you're infusing into it. Not to downplay how hard it is to infuse that into a firm, but I think it's really interesting the way you approach it.
Yeah. I think a lot of people say no. I think I would say yes. And it's a really compelling arbitrage because you're buying the tax business. And in general, when we pull somebody over from the tax team to the CAS side of our business, we're 4 to 10xing the annual fees. So as with any acquisition of a firm, it depends on the makeup of those clients. Are they, so, living in the past that they're not going to be suited for, you putting them on a more modernized stack. You still have those issues, but yeah, that's a big growth opportunity if all you're paying for is that tax business. If they're a good fit for your CAS business too, then it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, and that acquisition would be, like you said, rather cheap, because the revenue you're probably getting from a pure tax practice is 4 to 10x less than when you add those services. So, but the big assumption there is you get high quality clients. You get clients that would benefit from having the service, and then of course you have to have somebody like yourself, or to implement these cloud accounting services. So, well, maybe there is a future interview where we just dissect that specifically. And if you're a listener and you want to figure out how to infuse this into your firm, maybe charge 4 to 10x, which you're currently charging for your clients, email me, david@jetpackworkflow.com, or drop us a note. Maybe we'll do a second interview just on that process that you did at your firm. I think maybe our listeners could really benefit from it as well, if you're up for it. I know I'm putting you on the spot. But I know we want to talk about the 3x3. Cool. So I know we want to talk about the 3x3. So let's kick it off. Let's start with 3 trends accounting professionals should be aware of and know about that could impact their firm. What's the first big one that you feel like, if you're in the profession today, you got to know about?
So big ones that surprised me coming out of 2020. So you mentioned launch for accountants. It's kind of like a giant funnel of new tech. And the cool thing I'm able to see is what part or what tech our clients or our accountants excited about. Like, what are they clicking on? What are they digging into? And it's never quite what you expect. So first trend that really surprised me, because we feature not only accounting tools, but like B2B, fintech, more stuff outside that accounting bubble. Thing that surprised me, accountants are going off menu. Like, I think there's this perception that there's this kind of group of companies that are, these are the tools for accounting firms. I think more and more we're actually seeing accountants beginning to reach outside of that bubble and find other B2B tools that will enable them. We ran our top 10 tools of 2020, and only a single one of them was an actual accounting tool. So that shocked me, and I think it's an interesting trend for sure.
Yeah, and well, I guess it's with everybody going. Everybody was online anyways, but now they're really online. So distribution's become democratized even further, like the next step function up in 2020. And so it makes sense. Now I am curious, what is like a tool that might have surprised you on that list? Do you remember 1 or 2 of them that were kind of interesting, that were kind of off menu, outside of the typical industry that you wouldn't see at a normal conference? What was an example of one?
Yeah. So for example, tool called UCalc. It was the number 8 tool from last year, UCalc, and it's basically just a calculator builder. And so it's the best like embeddable calculator builder I've seen. So you design your own little calculator. It gives you the code, you drop it on your website, and then that's like, a lead magnet for clients. It's something they can come back to and keep using. And it actually handles surprisingly complex cases in a way that is, understandable for a numpty like me. And so like that's as accountants are looking at new ways to find clients online, this goes hand in hand with the idea of building a kind of a marketing funnel on your website and having a, helpful calculator as a lead magnet to help people understand that new tax, or, how your PPP forgiveness works and that sort of thing.
Really cool. So that's the letter U and then calc as in calculator, or is it YOU calc?
Yeah, it's the letter U, calc. The website is ucalc.pro.
Cool. And we'll, by the way, we'll link it up if people are out on a walk or whatever they may be doing and they miss jotting it down. We'll link it up on the blog. So first big trend is accountants are going outside of the accounting industry to pull technology into their tech stack. And so, what's cool about what you just mentioned is like, a lot of these industry conferences, which have nothing against, they're amazing, they're wonderful, they're great, what have you, but you probably wouldn't see some of these vendors at the conference, but they could give you maybe a competitive advantage on the marketing end, or help you point your clients to a resource that can help them answer their own questions and build self-service functions in your own firm, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. What's the number 2 big trend you see, or surprising trend that you saw come up over the last year?
Second one I've got that's kind of logical. It's the notion of coming to terms with the fact that we've got some legacy tools that are gonna be hard to get out from under. The main thing being, our tax suites. Trend I'm seeing is tools to wrap around those legacy tools to get a little automation there where you wouldn't otherwise have it. So robotic process automation being a good example. These tools that used to require developers and, you needed to be able to write code and that sort of thing, they're getting good enough to where you can visually design your own stuff and it's pretty quick and easy. And things that we never would have imagined having before, like being able to wrap an API around your tax software, stuff like that, is becoming more accessible. So, we've all kind of griped about, the shortcomings of some of the tools that we're stuck with. And there isn't a clear path out of that where you've got this, new shiny thing that you're going to trust to do all your clients' tax returns. So what's the next best thing? You've got some options now for technology to wrap around those legacy tools.
And what's an example of some of these automations that you had mentioned? Like, what are you seeing? And we'll talk about maybe an example of 1 or 2 of these wrappers, but then what can you do once you have these APIs wrapped around these legacy systems?
Any sort of input output. So give you an example. We've never really lived in a world where client tax data was accessible via API. So like even just getting your head around what's possible then, it's odd. But things like filing extensions en masse, pulling the AGIs of all your clients or QBI, stuff like that. When you're looking for over-the-top kind of scenario analysis, some of the tax tools have, data mining utilities that will let you do that. But to have a solid API you can access at any time that will not only get you information out of that file, but also even push updates into the file, like, for client information, stuff like that. That opens up a whole new kind of set of possibilities that I think we're still just exploring because it's something that's never been an option. The idea of a client information update happening in one place and then updating in your tax software historically has only been possible if you were bought into that entire suite of tools. But if I can send out a type form, something like that, that's going to give them a better user experience, and you've still got a way on the back end to sync that into your legacy tool, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, really interesting. And so who do you see leading the way? What tools really surface as some of the ones that folks are most interested in, in this kind of wrapping APIs around these legacy suites?
So robotic process automation is probably the shortest path to that right now. And the one that has come down market, for the little guys like me is Electronique. They're an RPA provider that has a very simple, easy to understand kind of visual flow designer. On top of that, in the last few months, they announced kind of a companion tool so that any of those bots that you build, like say you build a bot to go out and, fetch a specific number from all of your clients in your tax system, they've got a companion product now that has a Zapier integration. So you pair those two technologies and that's pretty wild. The idea that you can push and pull anything from your tax software with a bot that's quick and easy for you to set up. And then you wire that with the power of Zapier and all the integrations that enables. That's pretty exciting.
So, and what was the name of that company again?
Electronique. So ELECTRONEEK.com.
We will definitely link that one up. It sounds amazing. Spelling's a little challenging.
Yeah.
But they didn't ask me, so I'm sure they're doing okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And that's really interesting, right? Because you're 100% correct, right? You can't, and we've been hearing it so often, right? And even when we integrated with Zapier, one of the big questions we got was like, oh, great, can we plug this into our tax suite? Well, not if you use like Eddie tax suite
Yeah,
available, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really challenging. We've seen folks try to make progress into moving the tax suite online, but it's certainly had its ups and downs. Whether you're a big player or small player, folks trying to do that. So I think this is interesting, and certainly tax is not alone in having legacy components. I think this is applicable even outside of it, but tax is a great example.
Yeah.
What is the third big trend that you were surprised on when you were reviewing the data from 2020?
So a big thing I think we're seeing from accountants, and it makes my heart happy, is we're seeing more tech-enabled accountants that are building their own bespoke integrations with things like Zapier and Airtable. So I think 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago now, we kind of hit that inflection point where cloud accounting made sense. You had these direct integrations that remove that aspect of double entry. Well, what's the next evolution from that? I think it's people being able to build their own bespoke integrations. So you're not limited to the tools that your stack has direct integrations with. It's now pretty simple and easy to pull a tool off of the shelf that's web enabled. Maybe it's got a Zapier integration, and you can wire those things up any way you want to, because every business is different. Clients have these weirdo use cases, and to have the power to yourself build those integrations is pretty cool. That opens up a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, that's really neat. And just to give an example of that, I mean, this is something I'm going to set up internally, but it hit me the other day. I record these things on Zoom. Content manager pulls them from Google, but then me, like a caveman, I'm opening up Zoom, copy pasting a link and putting it into a Google sheet, and then she could pull it down from Zoom. Like, that's just Zapier. That's just
Yep.
7 minutes of Zapier. Every recording, create a new line item in this Google sheet, right?
Yeah.
And drop the recording link. How do you see this impact for accounting firms? What have you applied either internally for your firm or in the community that you're with? It sounds like two of the tools you mentioned are Airtable and Zapier. So what are some interesting things you've seen in the accounting community on that end?
For me, what it's enabled is, the reason our CAST business has grown. One of the big reasons is we have a pretty unique set of financial products. If you look at the accounting tools on the shelf, like your receipt banks, stuff like that, you can build your business around what are the things that the tools do really well right now, and that's all I'm going to do. A lot of times that doesn't align with what businesses need. So what I think we've got the flexibility to do is still productize, try to focus what you're doing, don't do everything. But then, your example of the Zoom link, you've got 100 of those things across your business. The really exciting thing for public accounting firms is we're going to double down on this service, and we're going to do it with 100 clients. And we can pick a service that we're able to build a really great kind of automation stack around. So I'm not limited to what's Receipt Bank going to do off the shelf for me. I'm more open from the standpoint of what does the client need. And then for us, it's not just the benefit of simplifying that for one client. It's how do we do that 100 times and totally leverage what's possible.
So what's an example of maybe something that you added on top that was custom for your firm on top of one of these existing tools? Does anything come to mind that you can talk about?
Yeah, so good example. We do a lot of dental, and in the dental universe, everybody has practice management systems where they manage all their patient payments and all that stuff. And that's totally separate from your accounting system. It's high volume. It's not the kind of thing that's ever getting, that's ever syncing automatically to your accounting system. And you have the age-old issue of matching up all of these payments to batch deposits. So you can have, a small to mid-size dental clinic's going to have, deposits from 5 or 10 different items that are going to be batched into a single deposit in any given day. Accounting systems are not suited for this. Even if you did a mass import, manually finding every single payment that gets pulled into that batch deposit each day is terrible. And they're not going to use their accounting file for invoicing. They can't. So we do enough of that to where we built our own tool around that. So what we do is we have set up an Airtable, a base with a deposits table and then a payments table. And what that does is it automatically looks at all of the payments in one table. It looks at all the different ways you can combine those payments in the previous 7 days from the date of the deposit. It finds the combination of payments that are associated with that deposit, and it does that automatically clear through the month. So we take what for one client is a 3 to 4 hour process a month, at least, depending on the volume. And that's, to get 80% of those reconciled, that's like a 45-second process now. So you think about leverage like that, that's a service that we haven't even advertised really, but we've got 25 clinics or so on it. And that's now $6,000 or $7,000 a month in a service for us that's really pretty much fully automated. But you build something cool like that, which is totally possible. And there's 100 of those niche use cases out there, and then you market around it. And before you know it, you've got this awesome thing that's unique to your firm, and you can make really good money on it.
So is the journey of pinpointing that is just be on the lookout for really tedious manual things that you're either doing today that take hours a month, or you've limited yourself, you haven't taken on services your clients want just because it would be so annoying to fulfill, right? So it's kind of was that a way to pinpoint?
In this case, it was the latter. So 90% of dental clinics don't do this reconciliation because it's so tedious. It just doesn't happen. Even though, our accounting brains are saying it needs to happen. In the past, I could tell them we can do it, but it's going to be like $500 to $800 a month. And they're like, no. Well, I just had a conversation with a dentist literally this week. Somebody was stealing from him, and had he had this service, it wouldn't have happened. We would have caught it. So in our case, it was actually extending into a need they had that we didn't have a cost-effective way to provide. And so we can bill them for the value of it. It's still less than our actual time would have been if we did it manually. But in our case, it could probably go either way. But in our case, it was like seeing this niche issue that we didn't have a great way to save, and then kind of building a system to handle it.
Yeah, so you took something that was literally seemingly one, the rate at which you would have to bill it, the market was just saying too much. And you can apply normal profitability rates to whatever normal billing rates firms have. You look at that area, and instead you applied it. You build out this tool, and I don't know what the gross margin of it is, but it's probably amazing, right? It probably far exceeds the typical human capital profit margins that we think of.
Yeah, so it runs automatically. We've got an offshore team that handles the exceptions, and then we've got a canned email that says, here are the exceptions, look into these deposits and these payments. Once they do, we've got a standardized report that's actually generated out of Airtable based on all the data that's already there. So they've got a cool deliverable every month, and they can see the work that we did. And yeah, it's one of our highest realization things by traditional measurements.
Yeah, it has to be phenomenal based on what you described. So these trends are super interesting, right? So we're going to link them up. And again, if you like this style show and you want to see more of these, happy to do more in the future, because I think these trends and these tools are really interesting. So again, drop me a line if you're interested, if you forget my email, open up Jetpack, just click the little happy face bubble in the bottom right, shoot us a note. The question I have though is okay, I think we see the potential of these trends, the things you're talking about, but it's reaching an area where it's becoming more accessible to more people in the profession, but you still need a little bit of technical know-how. You still need to know how to stitch these tools together, and so what are your recommendations for, maybe there's some listeners right now, they're just like, their mind's blown, right? Like that example you just gave is really cool. It's high margins, there's great client service. It's amazing. But how do you start reprogramming your mindset to approach problems, not as a way of like adding people to solve them, but creating these bespoke automations and integrations to solve them? How do you begin that journey?
You got to surround yourself with people that are doing it, at the very least thinking about the same thing. It's not the kind of thing that you're going to sit in a dark room and think your way through by yourself. You got to be exposed to what other people are doing. And you have to find or manufacture a way to surround yourself with the people thinking about that stuff. I was a guy historically, I was not on social media at all. I sat by myself, made cool stuff. In the last year, I really made an effort to put myself out there, and it accelerates your learning so much just by surrounding yourself with people that are working on the same things. We're in kind of a, no code is kind of the label slapped on, being able to build things in a visual way and not needing to have coding expertise. But since the very first computer, we've been on this inevitable march toward anybody being able to build software. I mean, that's just the inevitable result. It just gets easier and easier and will be more and more accessible. Every year the tools get better. And that even goes for, the stuff the developers do. That stuff gets more abstracted every year, more accessible. They're more efficient in how they can do it and all that. And so it's just a matter of time before it's quick and easy for anybody to scrap something together. There's still a lot of situations where you're much better off using something off the shelf. But it's not something that's really even started recently. It's just kind of this inevitable march. That's where we're headed. So you got to be thinking, what does the world look like? And what does serving my niche look like when anyone can quickly and easily spin up something bespoke that may look like it's for a dentist or, solve their specific niche problem. That's kind of where we're headed. My thing is, I want to find all the other accounting professionals that are working on the same thing. Because I think that's how you learn the fastest.
Very cool. This is a good segue to talk about some of the communities that you've built. And so if somebody wants to continue to explore both the tools that are coming out, but then also maybe want to start exploring communities like the one you've built around folks with similar mindset, what is the best places or ways for them to connect with you?
Yeah, you name dropped them at the beginning. So launchfa.com, that's just a platform that's featuring cool new tech that's relevant to accountants. And then I had this exact problem. It was basically, how do I find a bunch of other people that are trying to build stuff like me, thinking about the future of the profession? I created a community for it called Realize, website's rlz.io. And all it is a bunch of dorks like me, all working on this stuff and trying to, find those opportunities. There's a lot of this stuff that is better off being built in community than on your own. So I use UltraTax just like tens of thousands of other accountants out there. Does it make sense for every single one of us to build an API wrapper around our UltraTax and do that 10,000 times? No, it makes sense to do it once, do it together. And so that's kind of the thinking behind starting to build that stuff in community.
Very cool. And you're on Twitter. I think that's where we first got connected. Yeah. And I'll say this, and I don't plug a lot of newsletters and things like that, but I'm a big fan of LaunchFA. I think it's really cool. You see tech on there that nobody else is talking about. This is tech that you could. It's probably going to be 2 or 3 years before it even surfaces on major industry publications, and you're talking about it today. I think that's how far ahead you are of the curve relative to kind of the behemoths of the journals and newspapers and magazines and websites that we most classically go to. So I'm a big fan of it. If you want to see what's on the edge, go to Launch FA. I'm in no way affiliated to the community, nor will Jason ever let me into it. But which I've asked them to be a fly on the wall. So maybe this is my public record to get in there. But it is a vendor-free community of like you said, just folks like Jason, just building out cool things they need for their clients. So we're gonna link that up and two final call outs for the listeners. One, if you want to hear more about Jason building out this cloud accounting service business and these niche items, shoot me a note, drop me a note. I think it could be a lot of fun to have a Zoom podcast like this. Maybe we could even just have a fun webinar, probably post tax season, to save our sanity. And if you enjoyed this style, this format, I feel like, Jason, you're just getting so much data on what the firm owners and the industry is kind of clicking on and leaning in towards. And so if the listeners like this, let me know. We can maybe set up a recurring thing around this. And Jason, thanks for carving out the time today to connect.
You bet. Always fun, David.